Hey Sheeples, this is the.
Hello, people. And well, I mean, you guys know me as the guy who has no name, but this time, before we get to that, we have someone very special joining us on this podcast.
We got a listener
Yeah, we actually
who's
have a
also
listener.
a co-contributor
Hi.
this time.
And to introduce her to you guys, or well, rather you sheepers, I keep forgetting
Yes.
that. I really
Hey,
need
no,
to learn.
let her introduce herself. Hey, go
Yeah.
on, come on, jump right
Yeah. You need to introduce yourself, actually. Let's go. Let's do that.
in.
Hey, Sheeples. I'm Varshini. Just here to talk about a few things I think is important to talk about right now.
Yes, we do need to
Definitely.
have a conversation. The COVID-19 thing isn't the only thing we have to talk about. Apparently, this
Yeah.
country's found even more depressing topic to get itself involved in.
I think this country had this topic
Going on for a while.
going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps like it's like this topic is like this huge whale, okay? It just like surfaces every once in a while, and then everyone just pushes it down. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go down, and then it just goes down, and then it comes back up, and we're like, why do we not talk about it all the time? But no,
Yeah. It should be a constant conversation. It should be a constant
Yeah.
improvement to betterment. But
100%.
that's not happening.
And
100%.
just to brief you all on this topic, the thing that we are going to talk about today is how women are being treated in our country in general, especially like with the boys' locker room thing coming into light, and how
Guess by
these
the accents already we are Indians. So hi, hello
Yeah.
from India. Hello, and I am not shaking my head as I say this. So, I'm
yeah,
not
shake it from
Arthur
side to side. The
Simpson.
Indian nod, dude, it
I am
has to
not
be
Arthur
there.
Simpson. I am not Rajesh Kutrapali. I am not one of those. I'm just saying hello. But we are from India, and yes, definitely around the world, women aren't treated the way they're supposed to. But in India right now, we've had this issue called the Boys Locker Room. And if you've read this title, you already know what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah.
And go on. What were you saying?
Okay, so for the uninitiated though, I think so.
Wait, sorry, I
Here's the
forgot.
thing.
What was your nickname for this episode? I'm sorry.
You know what, Varshini, why don't you give me a nickname for this one? Because this whole episode is for you and about like women. So you
Way to add the pressure, dude.
Yeah, thanks.
you know what? It removes the pressure from me to think of a name right now.
Oh, smart.
Ayushman, you can't do that.
I got my. It's okay. Okay, cool. Let it be. I'll have my real name out for this one today. It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Oh my
I'm
God.
okay with that.
I'm the only
Okay,
one
that just
hiding under the
came out.
shadow.
Hey, that's fine. Just to say that I've known Varshini for a while. It's been like I think we got to know each other through like these digital marketing classes we used to go to, and basically that's how like I've known her, and that's why it came out. My name came out because she knows me well, so she's not used to the nickname thing. But
yeah. IIT, I mean, like brand plugin, right there. But
brand plugin.
no.
Cool. Okay, now people know where we went as well. Great.
Yeah. Everyone's piecing your digital footprints together. Okay,
Dude,
wait,
now he has to pay you royalty and shit.
Yeah,
I swear.
You know, not spot is not happening anymore. But okay, back to Varshini.
But yeah, back to the topic at hand. You know what? I think boys' locker room in its own way should be something that I think Varshini you should talk about more, because this is something you've been facing. But to begin with, there was this group of boys, mainly located in Delhi, who made an Instagram group where they used to kind of share photos of girls and younger girls or something, and basically they commented on them. But commenting is one thing. They started giving rape threats, like talking about how they felt like they wanted to rape these girls, and it was just such a demeaning chat. Not even like, one thing is objectifying, I mean, as bad as it is, then you go to rape, and it just gets worse. And I think this is just despicable behavior from anyone, and especially like when the fact that people start talking about, oh, it's just these guys and not everyone is like that. Like, we know, girls know that not everybody is not like, it's not everyone. But you know what, in this situation we aren't helping the conversation. We are kind of trying to make it like die down, and that's not what we need to do.
All men are not the same, bro. Don't generalize.
That line just
Oh
like
my God.
pisses me off. Oh my
Right.
God.
Please tell us why the hashtag not all men is so silly. Like,
Yeah.
just to tell us why.
Okay, the
Yeah.
thing is, we know not all men, but the problem is enough men. There are enough men that it's happened to all women,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the problem. Because like it's not that we don't know that not all men are like this, but at some point I feel like even the good ones, right, kind of either detach from this conversation or just ignore what's happening because they don't want to like get involved unless it happens to someone they know. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've been seeing that a lot of times happen to me specifically, personally. And I
Oh,
really
thank
feel
you.
that at some point that, you know, like no matter how much women fight for, if this if this fight is not from both sides, it's not going to work.
And that's
Yeah.
the main thing, right? We need to work together to kind of make this safe, like safer space for everyone. It's not just like the fact that oh, the women are fighting and that's good, they're raising their voices, but if the other people don't do that, don't help them, don't push that voice ahead, then
Yeah.
there won't be any change. And that's the worst part, right? And that's what we want to try to do as well. That's why we wanted to do this topic, because if we can't show support, then what's the point? Like the whole protest is for no reason. Like just every time this happens, people raise their voice and then it dies down.
Yeah, it just dies
that's
down,
that's
and
not
then
fair.
yeah, and then it's not, again, like we were talking about, it's not it should be a constant conversation. It should
Yes,
keep
ongoing. It has to.
yeah, it should, yeah. And so at some point, and there should be progress. You can't keep going every time something happens, you take one step ahead and then go four steps back.
Mm-hmm. And I
And
mean, I've seen you be really active about it as well. And like, so here's my question to you: like, what was the first thing when you saw this news pop up? What was your first reaction, and what was it that you wanted to like? What did you feel throughout this process?
so honestly, I was very, very livid. I was very angry. I was very pissed, but also I wasn't surprised because this has happened so many times before to people I know, to me. So I wasn't surprised. I was like, oh, this is just another chat because I know there are other chats that exist like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first saw it, I was like, oh my god, when is this going to stop? When is this going to change? And I was extremely triggered because and not just me, okay, most women were triggered, almost all women I know were triggered because it's happened to them at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the problem, and that's what we are fighting against, that it keeps happening, it keeps happening, but nothing is changing. Like you said, it goes on for like a minute and then it dies down.
And like in general, we've seen a lot, like especially on Twitter, right? Like people become so vocal, but then there's that other vocal minority of like I guess, I don't know, men, or rather not just men, like people in general who don't understand the topic and just are like, no, you can't just see it like this. You have to, like, it's not the time to be, explaining something to the person who's feeling in a way, or in a particular way, about something that's so despicable. Rather, you need to like understand the points and not like fight against it, but rather, push the agenda. And when
Yeah.
we see like other women also at times put the whole situation down, it kind of makes us also feel like, is it like, is not everyone feeling the same? Is it like, is it an issue people are not like able to come together for it? Even within like women in general, you see so many people talk about not all men, and it's a bit weird to see that in general.
You
Like
know,
if
Yeah,
what,
because
what really breaks my heart is when Varshini said that I was livid and then
hmm
I wasn't. And that just sort of like broke the silence because it made me realize of how recurring this issue is. I
yeah.
mean, of course, awesome. We're all talking about it right now. It's doing the news cycles, it's grabbing eyeballs. But the fact that this happens to women on, I mean, this just made me realize that this probably happens to women on an everyday basis. And it might sound like I'm being pretty naive over here, but you don't want to believe that men can actually do that. And
yeah,
in when I say men, if you're getting triggered, I'm sorry, but trust me, this isn't personal. I'm really referring out to the people who are guilty. And if you're getting triggered, then you should ask yourself that if you aren't guilty, why you're getting triggered. But the
Yeah.
fact that this goes on an everyday basis is just really heartbreaking. Also, that I'm hearing the word livid after the first Harry Potter book, so it's nice to hear that there is something.
Yeah,
What
you guys must do a episode on HP. Come on.
Oh
Why
yeah,
are we-
yeah. It's in the work. I think this is like three episodes
bubbling
in a
like,
row. We've stopped 3 episodes in a row. We have mentioned like we want to do
yeah, it's
this.
like build,
Yeah.
it's like the biggest build up like ever. But no, just getting
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
The my the woman that I was dating, she made me
Mm-hmm.
realize we aren't together anymore. But I really respect her for the fact that she turned me on to feminism. Initially, I used to hate that word. I
Mm-hmm.
used to be very jaded and very biased towards it. But a few things that she said really stayed with me because the one thing that she always kept repeating is that women have been oppressed against not only by men but also by other women for
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Like, I love my mom, I love my dad, I love my relatives, but I have seen my female relatives to probably be some of the most sexist people I've ever come across. Say I enter the kitchen and I love cooking and I want to help, and they're like, "Ugh, no, a guy's not supposed to do this." And just very casually referring to their daughter as beta. And,
Hmm.
it just blows your mind away because the sexism is so deep rooted, and if it's being promoted by another woman, I mean, the irony over there is so stark because you're like, hey, don't you see what's happening? Like, look at all the Hindi serials that you see on the telly. You have
Yeah.
a female antagonist and you have a female protagonist. You have the mother-in-law who's harassing the daughter-in-law because she had a female child. Now the layers of irony over there are so stark because all three of them are women, and it's like
And
some
the crazier part is like we see this in everyday life, and we also
yeah,
kind of like we don't realize it in the beginning, right? Like we've
yeah,
seen it happen so many times that you guys like guys are gonna do this, and women are gonna, and this is usually from our older relatives like that we've seen
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though it's like some people are starting to change in that matter, but again, it's still such a sad thing. Like as a kid, you don't really think too much about it, and at that time your mind can be molded and maybe you also start thinking that way, but as you grow up you start to see these small like actions, small words being used, that you realize that sexism has such a deep rooted effect in our society that people don't even think it's wrong to do this, and they don't realize what they're saying or what they're doing and how their
Yeah. It's
actions can
been.
affect people.
Yeah, it's been happening for, like he said, it's been happening for years, and just it's not just from men, it's from women, from even sometimes even your own mothers or your
yeah,
grandmothers, so it could be
yeah,
anyone, because they have been brought up to believe that that's the way it should be, that's the way things should be, that men should do these things and women should do these things, and that's how the society will be. And it's so hard to change that narrative, but it's a ongoing battle.
correct. You're absolutely right.
And the truly like amazing fact is you are actually coming out and saying all these things and are ready to take that stance. Like we need more women and other like people in general to be like that, and start taking that stronger make their voice known and take that stronger stance of no matter what we have to stick to this narrative and we have to
Yeah.
push this idea ahead.
Okay, so I'm someone who hasn't really read much into the boys' locker room thing. I went over it on the surface, and it just like disheartened me so much that I gave up. So, Varshini, tell me a little bit more about it. This was an Instagram group, and when I mean, how did they get busted? I mean, how long has this been going on for? How did it
uh,
happen?
so it's been going on for a while. The group has existed for a while, and they've been posting pictures of like other women of all their own classmates and stuff like that, and just sending them and talking about their body parts and objectifying. And it started with that, and then later they started morphing their pictures,
Oh, fine.
and then putting it up there, and then being like, oh, I'm gonna rape her, or I'm just
Oh,
I want to rape her. And then there was a point where it even went to the fact that when they got caught, they were like, oh, I should leak her nudes and then she'll be fucked. It
damn.
actually went to that level.
it
And
it started becoming like more and more toxic, if you want to call it that.
yeah,
And I think these boys didn't realize what they were doing in general, and like these are secret groups that you usually don't get privy to, but as kids we need to start, I think, learning this fact that we need to really kind of respect the other gender's
Are
privacy and
they boys?
understand.
Like, literally, are they boys? Are they not adults?
They were
No,
16,
they are
17,
yeah, they were
15,
16,
Oh,
16,
17.
wow.
17. Yeah,
Oh, and then they were talking about rape. Oh, fuck.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the
exactly.
thing, because that's what they're growing up around, right? They
Yeah.
Women are constantly like abused, and like this rape culture is so strong. That's what they're
Yeah.
growing up around. They're
No, no,
seeing on the internet every day
that's
that
the
women are
perfect
being
word.
bullied.
It is a rape culture, and I think India is again I'm calling out the country as a whole, but it's the only country I have come across where the victim is also the reason for their crime. हाँ? मतलब तुमने
Yeah,
कपड़ा कम
yeah,
पहना, इसलिए तुम्हारा रेप हुआ. And I don't know if people realize the stupidity when they say these words, but I know some extremely uh, big personalities that have said these things on the news, that have said these things on the internet on multiple occasions, and just this mentality that a woman is the reason. I mean, she's the last person you should blame. I mean, you can blame society, you can for a change blame the person who did it, but no, you will blame the girl. And that's I don't know if people are deliberately that stupid or do they just say these things to grab eyeballs, but it's so messed up. Like as a country, we talk about, oh, this Western culture ruined our heritage. I mean, what heritage are we talking about? We're a country where if a woman child was born, she was drowned in a container of milk. We are a country where we had sati, where it's sati was actually abolished by the Britishers. And that's really saying something. And if I'm off on my facts, please correct me. I'm not a historian, but from whatever little I have read here and there, we have this habit of deflecting the problem. That it's a Western
yeah,
culture infiltration.
yeah,
India तो बहुत great है, but it's because of this shows and ये तुम लोग Big Bang Theory देखते हो और How I Met Your Mother और Baywatch और ये सब जो देखते हो, but deep down we were fucked up. We were pretty fucked up even before Western culture supposedly messed us up.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like in our culture, this has been a thing that's going on for a while, and I think we don't. People usually don't find it easy to find faults within their own
Yeah,
ideologies or the way
we're very
they've lived
very
overall.
myopic that way.
Yeah, so that's what needs to be changed, right? Like, yes, we have some really beautiful things in our culture, such beautiful traditions, but then there are parts that we need to change according to the times
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and
And
it's always
yeah,
like since childhood, right? The girl child is always taught how to be safer, how to dress a certain way, how to sit a certain way, and all these rules are imposed on her, but no one really tells the boys to like, be better in general.
Right, right. I mean, I'll tell you this incident, okay? There used to be these neighbors living across from me, and there was a brother and a sister, right?
Yeah.
And I was they were elder to me, but I was good friends with them. And like right from the beginning, I could see the kind of differential treatment that was happening to both of them. Like you said very correctly, the girl was always supposed to wear a particular kind of clothing, and the boy was given a free hand. And I remember particularly when these guys were probably 18, 19, the guy was caught at his home with his girlfriend and his parents. I literally remember opening my door and his father like beaming in pride and saying, "आज मेरा लड़का आदमी बन गया." And
Oh my God.
6 months down the line,
that's
a doorbell
um,
rang, and I opened the door, and my sister and that girl were friends. She was sobbing. They took her in. She was apparently caught with a guy, and her parents beat the living fuck out of her. They literally didn't take her home for a week. They were apparently
crazy.
embarrassed that their daughter has lost her honor. And it's so messed up, right? Like a year ago, I
Yeah,
was in
man.
Bangalore, and I reconnected with a lot of school friends over there. And when I met them, they weren't living in the best of conditions, right? You could say that they really
Hmm.
struggled for a meal, and then they were struggling to make rent and everything. And when I asked them that why aren't they just staying with their parents in their comfort, and they said just to do things that a guy had to do, they have to move away from home. Shorts पहनना है, तुमको move out करना पड़ेगा. तुमको date करना है, you want to drink, you want to party, you want to stay out late at night. Sorry, can't do this in your own parents' house. I mean, but if you have a brother or if you have a cousin who's a guy, he can do all of those things. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's isn't that unfair, Varshini? Like
Yeah.
growing up in a house with.
Yeah, it's definitely unfair. Like, so I used to live in Chennai before.
Okay.
I grew up in Chennai, and people are definitely more conservative there than Bombay. Now things are changing, but back then it wasn't. So I was also not allowed to wear certain clothes. I was not also allowed to go out past 6:30.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of things that changed for me because I moved away from that city. So
Yeah.
it wasn't mainly that my parents were those kind of people, but they were doing it because the society was asking them to.
वो भी messed
They,
up है ना यार. I mean, like just the fact right now, it made me feel like, of course, I don't know why, but it made me feel so hurt when you said you weren't allowed. I mean, who the fuck
yeah,
is anybody to really allow anybody, right? Like, just because you give somebody a roof, or just because you're housed in a society, I don't know why people get like this whole system of where your life is being dictated and you have to ask for permission. And God, it's so suffocating.
yeah, that right is only with themselves, not anyone else. You can't just, that authority does not come to your parents or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, anyone. It can't, you can't just make it about that.
Mhm. Yeah, you need to be free to live the way you want to live, and just the moment you start putting restrictions on people is the day you start half the time I feel like these restrictions are what cause so many like people to get frustrated in different ways and take drastic actions. And like this is just there are so many examples that come up in this same matter, whether it be, and this comes into late for mental health as well. When you come to
Yeah,
like restrictions being put on people, they start feeling that suffocation, like Z mentioned, and they start going towards a darker place. And when you start it takes you a moment to make that split second decision of what, I don't want to be here anymore. And this same thing kind of reminds me of something that was related to this whole case,
yeah,
which I think I spoke to Varshini about as well just before, the podcast. We were recording the podcast today, and this is something that came to light like about yesterday, right? Where
yeah,
there was this sister who wrote who wrote this post about her brother, where her brother was wrongly accused in this matter of harassing a girl in some way. It wasn't mentioned in what way, but the girl accused him, and her and her friends started putting this pressure of like you're a harasser, you're a really bad person, and all that. And the boy who had not done anything and was just being falsely accused started coming in under that pressure of like, I have not done something. Why is my life like under like this microscope, and why am I being questioned so much? And in trying to explain this to his friends, his family, he couldn't take that pressure, and he genuinely it like because of that anxiety and stress ended up taking his own life,
Oh,
which is which is such a sad thing to hear. And the worst part of it all is when the sister spoke to this girl who accused him. That girl just kind of shrugged it off and said like he should have had the balls to kind of handle this kind of pressure because it's not her, it's not her fault. And how can you take someone's life in such a, I don't know, light manner, like just someone taking their own life because of such things in such, I don't know, it's just sad to hear, genuinely.
savage.
it's it was just such, it's all of this is so toxic, and it just, I don't know, I'm honestly out of words, like I don't know when these things are going to change, and I don't know what made her falsely accuse him, or why she did that, because, and now that he's dead, it's, you can't go back from that. You can't, I mean, how do you go back from that? Where do you go from here?
I think all of this is so deep rooted, man. It's hard to admit it, but the environments that we grow up in, unfortunately, really make us who most of we are. Like 90%, 80% of who we are is really dictated by where we're growing up, how we're growing up. And unfortunately, at least in India, it's still pretty backward. No matter how educated or how moneyed you are, I think the mentality at most Indian households is still very backward. And I think that's one big issue. But after you become an adult, and at least till you can take your after you can take your own decisions, I think it's a time for a lot of people to really ask themselves the burning question: is that, are their beliefs really valid? And I
Yeah.
think that's something that we don't do. When we grow up accepting something for right and wrong, we usually like to live our life that way. But it's actually really important for each of us every once in a while to look back and ask, is saying things like he didn't have the balls to. I mean, something is inherently wrong and very objectified there. Saying like don't cry like a girl, something is inherently wrong and flawed with that. We shrug these off
It's
as colloquial things
yeah.
that we pass around every day, but I think it's just so flawed. I mean, and
gender roles that we've given people in general, right? Like, why do boys always have to be that, macho person without like a care in the world, and why
Yeah.
do girls
Yeah.
always have to be like, the weak, emotional person all the time? Like, it can be
Sensitive.
opposite. Yeah,
Yeah.
sensitive. It's not at all like that. Like, it's such a weird thing to think about, especially like because there's such a big spectrum in this whole matter where people are in different places in their lives, they have different environments that they've grown up with, and they are of different demeanors, but they end up like, just because there's this gender identity that comes up, they start getting put into this category. And I think, Varshini, you must know, like, experience this a lot more than any of us do, because I mean, with the situation that happens, and like, throughout, we've started learning a lot about and seeing a lot like how girls are treated. Like, what is it that you must have so many things that you've faced. If you would like to share something like that, like, that we might face or might hear from people on a daily basis, like, what is it that we can change in this matter as well?
I feel okay. Firstly, about what Z said, I always keep saying that people have to unlearn. When you grow up
Mm-hmm.
and you understand that some things aren't right with the way. Not, I'm not going to even blame the parenting or whatever. That's not my place. But the
Mm-hmm.
society, what the rules and what you've grown up around, basically what patriarchy you've grown up around, you have to unlearn that and you have to break the cycle. Because once, if you don't break the cycle, it's a constant thing. It'll keep going. You will put that on your kids, and then those people, if they don't realize, they'll put that on their kids, and it's a never ending cycle. Then you
True.
have to break the cycle.
for sure.
And about and dude, I face casual sexism on a daily basis from literally everyone. Like
We
if
ask
even
you
if
this, and like, if only if you're comfortable to talk about it, because we don't want you to be in any way uncomfortable to bring these topics up. We can, like, if you don't want to speak about all
no,
of
no,
this.
I'm okay speaking about it.
All right, so I mean, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off in between, but I just wanted to put it there, like, we don't want to force anything out here in general.
Yeah, I face casual sexism on a daily basis. I'm sure men do as well, but the level is different. I
Mm-hmm.
like women face it much more because, like, I always keep saying that even if the sexism is like as casual as, oh, a woman should know how to cook or women should stay in a kitchen, that's a very normal line. But
Mm-hmm.
that also should be called out, because when you don't call that out, then that becomes like a routine, that becomes like a habit that you can't break, and that's
Right.
forced upon you, and then you have to do those things.
True, true. And
And like this thing happened to me the other day, and I was just out buying vegetables, like right before this lockdown and the whole COVID thing, and this neighbor auntie that I know, not very closely, but she was there buying, and she just asked me, how are you, whatever, and then she goes like,
so trust me,
so when
she
are you
knows
getting
you way better
married?
than you think. She trusts more, or she knows more about you than you think. So
Yeah.
yeah, she knows you very well. You don't know her well.
So
Just
she goes like, when are
understand.
you getting married? And that was such a personal question, because I don't know her at all.
What
And
was
I'm
the
just
first
like,
thing she said to you? Like, hi, when are we getting? Okay, auntie,
Yeah,
please
like,
take me out for a dinner at least once. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
And
like, if you know me, then yeah, like, Sita marriage. Like, when are you
yeah,
getting
yeah,
married?
yeah. And then I'm like, auntie, I'm not ready. So she's like, how old are you? Like 25. She's like, then you're ready. I'm just like, what?
Oh wow.
okay, yeah. Just auntie things.
Just auntie things, man.
Like what? Like where? It's like all of these aunties have one WhatsApp group, and
Yeah.
everyone's getting all of their info about all the
Yeah.
inappropriate, sexist, aunties things to say on that. Like
Yeah.
right from GM and hi-fi emojis to be namastes, I think all of them have this secret school where they get trained. It's
Like aunties are the Karens of India.
Yeah, for sure. High time there should be memes on them now.
Oh yeah, right. Like,
what about
it's just those
tell us
things.
tell us something about all the casual conversations on
Yeah,
Instagram that just turn into you getting hit on, and
yeah.
like how annoying must that be?
Yeah, that happens very
Like,
often.
hi, can we be friends? I promise I just want to be friends. And then 3 messages later, Tinder पे username क्या है? Like,
Yeah. So it happens. It happens very often. So even on Instagram or whatever, okay, people keep DMing me and then goes like, "Hi, I just want to like work with you. I want like I just tell me what your pay is and what you." And then I'm just like, "Dude, just email me. My email is on my profile.
yeah.
You can brief me what you want, and I'll do it." And he's like, "Oh, but can you give me your number?" And then I'm just like, "No, just please email me." And then he's like, "No, but I want your number. It'll be more clear." I'm like, anything can be said in an email. If it's work, you can say it in an email. You can do
Yeah.
it.
That
But
must be so
yeah,
That
frustrating. Like
like
this,
I genuinely sighed really loudly the moment you
yeah,
said that.
it's like I can figuratively imagine you like standing with a tennis racket and just fending off all these weird creepy people that are coming. Like you have to be your own spam filter, and how annoying must that
how
Yeah.
how how I wish I can actually do that in real life.
be? Yeah,
Oh
right.
yeah, right.
Well, I'm sure occasionally somebody turns up and you all hit it off. Okay, that's another point, right? And I'm not ashamed to admit it, but like 5 years ago, I was somebody who had a very different perspective, and I was like, ye kya hai? Like women get hit on by 10 guys, but if they get on that one guy they think is cute, they don't mind that. And the 9 guys are the devil. And now I look back and I'm like, no, oh my God, I was such an idiot. Because like I'm discounting the whole concept of preferences. Like,
Yeah,
what's stopping anybody from having preferences? Like, what? And then there's this whole whataboutery that we do, right? Like, we look at something that's very normal and we don't challenge it. Like, if we look at the fact about a few hundred years ago, slavery was a very normal thing. It was a very
yeah,
accepted thing, and but that didn't make it right. And that's one direction that a lot of people don't go in. That normal is not right.
right,
Right and
correct.
Yeah.
wrong are usually constructs of majority wins. मतलब
Yeah,
हम सबको लगता है चिकन खाना चाहिए तो सही है, हमको लगता है कुत्ता खाना गलत है तो गलत है. मतलब it's literally like that. Like
yeah. If you can pet him, then you can't
Yeah.
eat him.
yeah, ये क्या है मतलब like what the fuck, like me as a person, every day I go down and I feed my stray dogs and cats chicken and fish, but when I myself have to eat chicken and fish I'm like no, this is wrong, and I'm like wait, something is wrong, चिकन खाने के लिए कुत्ता पेट करने के लिए, but okay.
Um,
So, I
no,
mean, if
yeah,
you're
like
listening to this, if Sheeples are listening to this, I
yeah,
really want to tell you that just because something is normal, just because something happens commonly, just because something happens in a group of friends, does
yeah.
not make
It
it right.
not at all.
And
Like never.
and it's your responsibility as a guy to speak out because women are speaking out, and that's
Hmm.
brilliant. But that momentum cannot continue. There's a reason why Me Too died out is because men didn't join the conversation positively.
Exactly,
A
exactly.
lot of men were defending. A lot of men were saying not all men, but तेरे को कौन blame कर रहा है? Who's telling
That's the
you?
part. Like I don't really understand that we people know that it's not all men, but just
Yeah,
be like understand the frustration that people are going through and want to speak
and
about. Like
the annoying part about men's rights only comes in when women's rights are being spoken about. मतलब
Exactly.
360 days ago, you're talking about like chain smokers and which club we're hitting and what guy is Bob Bro. And then suddenly women's issues are being discussed. I'm like, dude, what about men's issues, man? Like,
Mhm.
we also
Yeah,
get raped. I'm like, Etras
yeah.
picture
That's
देखा is
fine.
not getting raped. Like, please.
Yeah,
What in movies में होता है, and even if it happens in real life, talk about it on a daily basis. Don't let that conversation come up only when we're talking about women. Okay, चलेगा.
yeah.
Make a page, but don't make it a competition, ना. मतलब
Huh, correct. It's
competition
not
नहीं है ये.
like we know men get raped, men get harassed. Like I completely agree, but that's a different conversation. Don't make it a
Yeah.
counter. We will not stop your fight. Don't be a hurdle in our fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the day like people start realizing this and start working together on this matter, like both the sides need to understand that one is not better than the other. It's not like a competition we have, but we have to like work together and improve this whole situation and society and learn from what we've been doing. Like what we've been doing is not fine, and how can we improve and look into ourselves is the day like I think we'll take that first step towards improvement.
For sure.
And
a lot of people,
a lot of people go on.
A lot of people keep telling me, both women and men, they're like, oh, feminism is a gray area. I'm like, no, it's not. It's really not. It's very simple. We've been oppressed for like so many years, and we're just fighting finally to have something that you already have.
Yes, exactly. And this is what I told this dude yesterday on a phone call, that I have no shame in saying that I identify as a feminist. I don't care if that means that it's not equalitarian. I don't care if that means the seesaw is on one side, because guess what? For the longest period of time, everyone's been biased towards men, and women got to feed off the scraps. If you just give them 100 years of complete biasness, still doesn't fix it. I mean, look at the fact. So there is this dude called Osho who used to preach on spirituality. So he has a book called The Book of Woman, and he says that man inherently has always been jealous of the woman, because in the race for creativity, a man has nothing in comparison to a woman. A woman can create like, मतलब that's the epitome. उससे ऊपर जाता नहीं है creativity. So what man has done throughout time is made sure that the women's energies are just diverted towards creation, because you make a woman pregnant, for the next 2 years, all she's going to do is divert her energy towards the child. She's going to give up her job. She's going to give up her personal interest. She'll probably wear the same set of clothes and just do house chores and be dedicated to a woman. Well, you will go to work and come back and say खाने में क्या. तो उस चीज में कुछ inherent flaw है, because as men our outlook on women has been very specific. मतलब our roles, gender roles are so defined ना. मतलब my mom works, but she'll come home and she cooks 2 meals a day too. That's unfair.
We learn that no, it's like a partnership, and we have to do these things together, like equal parts, whether we are taking care of the child or whether we are cooking food. Like if your significant other, whoever that might be, is tired, like why can't you just get up and take that extra effort and do it for her, him, whatever your preference might be. And again, like it's an equal relationship where you need to understand that you are as much in this relationship as the other person, and you can't just expect things to happen for you all the time.
I completely agree.
One thing that I want to mention over here, which is going to be the elephant in the room, and if you're a guy, you're automatically going to giggle when I say the word porn, and pornography is a big problem.
I just giggled right now.
Right? Men tickles for some reason. And I'll tell you why pornography is the problem, in my opinion. Again, I'm ashamed to say that till a few years ago, I was heavily addicted to pornography, but it's been 3 years now that I've gone clean. And the reason why I went clean is I read this piece on how pornography really promotes women being treated as objects. And I think for a lot of men who are coming of age, who are, let's say, 12, 13, 14, obviously making a girlfriend and having physical relations is very inaccessible. So pornography serves as a proxy. It becomes like your way out. So I mean, it's so sick. If you go to a pornography website, you actually have categories, and rape is one of the category. Men actually have a fucking rape fantasy, and
it's extremely sad.
I'm usually the one to say that to each their own, but if you're one of that person, fuck you, man. No. Just switch off. Don't.
That's not the thing you need to promote at all.
Not at all.
Like,
and
that one thing is
it's so messed up, because pornography it's one of, like, obviously women don't sit down men at 13 or 12 and tell them, hey, you know what, this is what women do, this is what women don't do, because women themselves are so muddled up. So for advice, young boys usually go to older boys or they go to pornography, and both are horrible teachers. And
the funny part here is both of like the older boys themselves have either been taught by like pornography or those
Yeah.
the older
actually,
boys.
your rite of passage is pornography, and it's
Yeah,
such a messed up thing because trust me, it has so many more demons inside of it.
yeah,
Like I know people who are in functional relationships but yet access pornography. I know people who are actually like addicted and who are in therapy to get out of that addiction. But it's such an easy hit of dopamine. It's so accessible, but at the same time it gives you completely wrong idea. So if you think of a man delivering a pizza to a woman is going to lead to something, that's because
yeah.
psychology and pornography have reinforced that idea in your head, and you need to break out
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
pattern.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people really need to understand like pornography isn't real. It's just all
Yeah. It's
fake and
the
yeah,
notion that they are putting out is extremely weird.
Yeah, मतलब मत
yeah.
देखो यार, like seriously, it's messed up. Like again, like I'm saying it from the point of view that I was somebody who was. I mean, I have no shame in admitting it. But now when I look
Mhm.
back, I just see how stupid my decisions were. If you're listening to this, you don't have to admit, but like you're obviously somebody who watches it. Just get out of it. Start watching something else. Start diverting your energies towards learning a musical instrument or another hobby, but just not pornography, man. If you have
Yeah.
doubts about women, try
Ask
yeah,
ask
Yeah.
women like
try to
Just
reach out
ask.
to initial
yeah.
women. It's not half ridiculous. Like
And again, that's why we are here, right? Like Varshini, like what is it that we ourselves can do? Like one is the unlearning thing for sure, but
Yeah.
what is it in our day-to-day lives you think that we need to change about our behavior and start understanding that okay, these are things in our dialogue or our like interactions with women that we need to change or interactions with each other. It doesn't just have to be talking to one specific gender or whatever, but like in general,
Yeah.
like what is it that we need to start changing within ourselves?
please preach.
I personally believe one of the main things that men and women both should do is call out other people when you feel that they are being sexist or racist or contributing to patriarchy or locker room banter or rape culture, whatever it may,
Mm-hmm.
whatever level it may be. Call them out, even if it's casual sexism like, oh, women can't drive. Call them out. It's as simple as that. Because when you put that thought in their head, and then you, at least there's some hope that okay, maybe he will think about it, or maybe she will think about it going back home, and maybe something will change and she will or he will stop someone else.
True.
It's a thing. It's a cycle that you have to break. And I constantly keep telling other people. So I recently had a conversation with a friend who was female and said, oh, I'm an equalist, I'm not a feminist. And just because I am a feminist, she said, oh, but I'm not as against men as you are. And that kind
And
of really triggered me off, because I was like, just because I support women does not mean I'm against men.
Yeah, see,
yeah,
it's not a
that
zero sum game, man.
that notion of like just because you're supporting one person and that means you have to be against the other doesn't like again, it's not the case at all.
I've had someone call me out on social media and said, "Bro, तेरा रेप हुआ है क्या? तो तू क्यों इतना उछल रहा है?" I'm like, तू
Oh
पागल
my
है क्या?
God.
मतलब तू पागल है क्या? मतलब do I have to wait to get raped to call out something that's wrong? Like really, what happened to like seeing something far ahead and having an intuition and nipping it in its bud? So it's silly. So you're right about that. That you need to call out people. You need to because as people we hate to pause and think. We hate to
Yeah,
Yeah.
ponder. We
Yeah.
don't like to be Ponzi. If we're all just wanting to just keep talking like I'm doing right now. So you have to stop me in the middle and say, hey, you know what? There's something wrong with what you're doing right now. But
Yeah.
hazy, hey hazy,
I think hazy.
see,
Yeah.
you need to stop talking and let Varshini
I
speak.
realize that. Sheeples, this is the way you do it, and that's
Yeah,
actually also very important. Is the way you do it. The way you can be really kind in calling someone out. You don't
yeah.
have to tag them and 50 other friends and say, hey, you know what? This friend is a sexist. Everybody, let's just boycott him.
And yeah, that's the
Yeah. You
other
don't have
half
to
of
do
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
The way
can
you
just
break.
casually be like,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe you should not do this. Maybe you should not
Yeah.
say this. Maybe
Correct.
just, shut up for a minute and listen to other people.
Yeah. Look, like
I mean,
it's very
especially for these
important.
small thing, like when it's like not something that that's really large and something they might not realize themselves. You don't have to be like, oh, listen, everybody, this guy does this. No. You can just be polite to them, go up to them, speak to them, and when those things don't work, when they are not ready to listen, that's when you need to maybe do something else about it. But especially like when it's not something that's really toxic, and rather that person does not even realize what they're doing, maybe just you speaking to them might change that, just might bring that small difference.
Yeah, it will definitely. A lot of people are like, oh, maybe when this whole boys locker room conversation happened, a lot of people were like, oh, maybe the parents should have done better or the school should have done better. And I'm just like, okay, like, I understand you're saying it's bad parenting, but we can't absolve ourselves of that responsibility, because we as a society is going through the problem. We made it okay about this whole boys will be boys narrative. We made it okay to victim blame, and this obsessive trolling happens every day on the internet to most women, and these are the things these boys and girls are growing up around. And that's what needs to change, and you can't just blame it on the parent or the school. You have to change as a society.
And that's where, like, we said this in the beginning, right? You are your own person, and when you do that, like, even parents are like not always going to be there to they can tell you things and all those kind of things, but they aren't going to be looking at what you're doing every day on your phone or whatever. And that it's not your parents that told you to, oh, try this, right? Like, that was your decision to look at that picture and say you wanted to do those kind of things to that person. And
at some point and I think it can happen as early as 13, 12, you develop an internal compass that really starts pointing out towards what's right. I mean, everybody has an inkling कि मतलब यार ये मैं गलत बोल रहा हूँ. And if you don't act on that, then that's really on you. I mean, if you try to defend these people on Instagram saying they were minors, that's as messed up as the Nirbhaya incident, where one person was let off the hook because he was a minor.
He was a minor.
And as someone who studied
at
law,
least finally they to give justice to that case, and even though it's too late now, way too late.
Did you see how long it took?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That way, that the juvenile who was just a few days away from being 18 was actually put up in a juvie home and let off.
And he was the one who done the worst thing as well, right?
Yeah, and that juvenile is now roaming the streets pretty free. So the whole मतलब ये tendency गलत है हम लोग की, that when someone blames you ना, you immediately fend that off with a excuse. What's the problem with just accepting that, hey, okay, you know what, I did something wrong, and just be quiet for a minute? Why do you have to defend it immediately?
And that's what we need to kind of start understanding ourselves, and this is on our generation especially, because we are kind of starting to see these things every day.
The person is always so confused with the fact that what really is the problem for so many men? Why are they so, I would use the term afraid. Why are they so afraid of a woman's body? I mean, me and Aishwan were talking about this the other day. I think I told you that there was this movie Dostana, in which there's a poster in which John Abraham is pretty much 95% naked. Like there's a side shot of him and he's wearing these small swimming trunks, and he's उसने नीचे किया है उसको, and you can see half his butt.
That
body. I mean, that is acceptable, but a woman, if her cleavage is exposed on the big screen, suddenly the censor board becomes
they censor it.
like हमारी संस्था करोड़ हो रही है, and like, of course they don't say that, just saying that for a joke, but it's so messed up. Why are we so afraid of a woman's body? And I would like to literally use the word afraid, because that's what this behavior reeks of. Like, if a man can go topless on the big screen, and if a woman has no problem with it and wants to go topless, who the hell is the censor board, or who the hell is the Janta, or who the hell are all these uncles who suddenly on WhatsApp say nahi hamara sanstha
sanskar?
That's so lame. I would literally say a lot of men are really afraid, and they will do all that they can to literally, figuratively, and literally try to control women and keep her tied down. And that
The stupidest thing in this argument especially is like, oh, seeing this will make the boy act like some, like make him do some things that he shouldn't do. And what do you mean, like those pictures will make them, like, can't the person learn to like understand and be a moral person and
like
realize they shouldn't be doing this?
Mentor the boy, counsel the boy, sit him down.
Yeah.
Like, why are academics teaching me about fucking rabi crops and kharif crops? Why are they not teaching me like why was I learning about sin theta, cos theta when I could have learned about being more sensitive towards women's problems? Like, I remember back in the 6th grade, man, and this was so douchey of all the guys in my class. There was a girl who had her first period in the 6th grade. She had her first experience with the menstrual cycle, and she stained herself, and the guys laughed, and she cried. And there was a female teacher in the class who was getting angry on the fucking girl. And
oh fuck!
Wow.
apparently, it turns out this girl was never given the talk by her parents. She didn't know what was happening to her. And all of the guys were like, "Dekh, usne susu kiya." Like, oh my god! When I look back, and I'm like, that was so insensitive. I think after that incident, at least the school should have realized that we need to sensitize boys towards this issue.
Also, talks with kids in general.
Yeah,
Like,
this is such a bigger issue because a lot of times, even when you even when I was in school, right, and when I had my period or whatever, I had to like hide the tampon or pad and like take it
remember that
because
black thing?
everyone
Like,
else would like, yeah.
that was so stupid, man. Like a few months ago, for my partner, I went to the chemist to buy a packet of pads, and the guy wrapped it in a newspaper, and I'm like, "Ye kya hai?" And he smiled at me, and I told him, "Tum smile क्यों कर रहे हो?" And I said that like pretty loud because I thought I should call him out, and it also highlighted a bigger picture, which meant कि मेरे पहले अभी तक कोई भी लड़के ने उसको या कोई भी आदमी ने call out नहीं किया था, and that guy's been working there for at least 5 years now, and that's so messed up. I mean, why do we hide these things? And that's the one thing that we have to realize, that the forbidden fruit always is more interesting. And that's the forbidden fruit paradox. If you try to tell people not to talk about something, if you try to ban something, if you try to make something off limits, people will want it even more. Look what
Want it
happened.
more.
Yeah.
Look what happened with pornography. Look what happens with marijuana. Look what happens with MMSs. Look what happens with these nudes. Because the culture is a culture where नहीं हम सब छुपा के करेंगे.
Oh, like speaking of nudes, like just today in the morning only, I think I saw a tweet about it, and I think Varshini, you might have seen this as well. About like this person who kind of had this chat with this guy and told him that no, I don't want your nudes, and the guy was like, okay, I understand you don't want the nudes, and then sent her the nude, unwarranted. And then she like shouted at him like, I told you I didn't want it. But then the guy is like, no, I thought you meant, yeah, I wanted the news. And like, what do you mean? Like, she directly is messaging you and telling you, I don't want your picture. Like, and why are you sending it to me? Unwarranted.
क्यों भेज रहे हो मुझे? मुझे नहीं चाहिए. What is wrong with you? Like all these unsolicited comments and photos and no,
But
man.
before all this, like Varshini, you were mentioning something where I think we might have cut you off. Like you were saying something about school.
Yeah, I was just saying school in general have to talk about sex education and menstruation. The only sex education we get was a 10th grade chapter.
You remember that?
Called reproduction.
The boys and girls were in separate classes and everybody was laughing and more than information, I guess there was fucking misinformation. Like it was
the teachers were like trembling and they're like, oh my god, we have to talk about this terrible topic. What am I going to do?
Like they couldn't speak about it at all. I
mean, like what the fuck is wrong with saying penis or breast or vagina or testicle? Like why do people have to, like the minute you say it, you're like people will giggle. Like what?
Because these things are so deeply sexualized and they're always seen as a sexual object and nothing beyond that.
That poor biology teacher, when she had to teach a chapter on human reproduction system. Fuck. Like, oh my god. I think everybody can relate with how afraid the teacher was. Dude, my teacher didn't make eye contact for 60 minutes straight. And that is
same.
Really. I think you know what, you're not wrong. For us is
I was raising my hand just to tell her, ma'am, pankha on kar do. मेरी तरफ देख तो लो at least. But it was so messed up, man. Like some of these things in this country are so taboo. And whenever I say this country, no, whenever I call out India, I have a lot of people who respond by saying, "Bro, तू इंडिया का बुरा क्यों कर रहा है? दूसरे countries में भी होता होगा." And I'm like, I don't doubt it, but I don't stay in दूसरा countries. I stay in India.
Exactly.
we
Exactly.
and we know what's happening here, so we
हाँ,
have to speak
ये
up.
डिफ्लेक्शन वाला एटीट्यूड है ना, ये वो व्हाट अबाउट रही है जो मतलब you don't have an answer for this, so you're like, dude, what about Canada? What about Pakistan? Pakistan has it worse. I'm like, यार तू गया है क्या पाकिस्तान में रहने के लिए? Like the closest you've been to Pakistan is an India-Pakistan cricket match. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, the only thing you know about Pakistan is that.
That's it. Bas, Pakistan sucks.
No, I mean, actually, you know what? I think it's just that every Indian knows everything about Pakistan, because everything bad you have to say like Pakistan.
वो भी मतलब पब्लिक प्रेशर है ना, बोलना पड़ेगा ये तो फिर
Yeah, otherwise you are not patriotic.
you're not
Yeah. They you don't have the relationship.
I would say that that's still a micro issue as compared to what we have with like
Yeah.
there is no gender sensitization. There is no respect for the opposite gender. Patriarchy though is reeking from every crevice of every corner of the person, and it's unquestioned. मतलब like ऐसा ही चलता रहा है, ऐसा ही
Yeah.
होता है. मतलब you want logic, you won't get logic. You will get no. This is how it's been.
And in the whole
Yeah, this is
case
our
of
culture.
yeah, like, and in the whole case of deflection, right? I think this is something we have to kind of mention, because it's also been in the news, in the Twitter sphere and social media everywhere. The other aspect, like where people are deflecting the current boys' locker room thing, and Varshini, you can back me up on this, is the girls' locker room thing.
Yes.
Whoa, what's that?
Let's talk about that. So basically, this bunch of girls created a group just like the boys did, and then they sent other girls pictures, and then they slut shamed them. They were like, "Oh, she's too flat chested, or she doesn't have an ass, and or she's too big, or whatever." They were like, "Oh, maybe she should not do this, or maybe she shouldn't do that," and they were constantly slut shaming them. And of course, this is problematic. I agree, it's definitely like super problematic. It's toxic behavior. It should be called out. But the only thing I didn't like about this conversation was all the men were like, "Oh, this is also happening. Why you are talking about man? They were like, "Why you talking about men? Why you blaming men now?"
And this also had to come along with this. Like,
yeah.
And you know what? The first thing that came in my head when you said this was, I'm sure some guy in some corner of the country said, "Hey, you know what? Let me just make 10 fake girl profiles and let's just maybe have these screenshots and let's have this pretend group. So I have a defense to the boys locker room thing." Like,
I didn't even be surprised if that happened, because a meme page released these screenshots, like not a legit person, like a meme page.
Page was this?
I really like, because I mean, the great part about a lot of women that I've come across is that the way they think is very different from the way a lot of guys think. So guys as such are very imaginative. Like they'd like to imagine things and that turns them on and they paint weird fantasies. But girls that way up they can compartmentalize sexual and non-sexual very well. For guys, most of these things are blurred. I find it hard to believe that a group of women created, because even on pornography websites, usually the percentage split is almost 97 to 98% men. So that statistics also.
Is that really? Wow.
Yeah,
I never knew this.
You have all of these Pornhubs and Brazers of the world doing their own surveys, right? And they talk about genders, and it's so it just goes on to say that women they have a very different way of thinking, and they have a great way of compartmentalizing. So for me, it's a little hard to believe that women actually created this group, but if they've done that, it's equally wrong. I think
the fact here that comes up and is like, we are never really told essentially like, oh, you need to think of this in this way, because it's always like, even whenever we've seen anything, even in movies or whatever, it's always sexualized. While women always like have that idea and seen like told by understand from their own mothers at times, right? Like how to like go about different topics, and we are always like, ye dekho, oh my god, this is so like this, and we are always, I don't know, it's the teaching part is there, like we need to kind of I don't know, maybe teach the younger generation as well and learn ourselves, because a lot of people in our own generation are not like
that
privy
one
to
is
all
what
these things.
Varshini said is that you reach a point where you are zen enough to unlearn. And
Yeah.
you're 60. It can happen at 16.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a philosopher called Descartes, and what he used to do, this was way back in time, and what he used to do is he used to wake up every day and tell himself, all that I know is wrong, but I have to prove myself that it's right. So
Yeah.
every day he would literally convince himself of his own ideas. I'm not saying be that drastic, but at least set a period. I mean, let your New Year resolution be to evaluate your beliefs. I
Yeah.
mean, once a year
Yeah.
isn't a short amount of time. So I think step one is really have the courage to unlearn.
Yeah.
And once you unlearn, it's really important to treat both genders with a lot of equality. It's really important to have a level playing field. I mean, just look at it this way, right? Like, what if you break a traffic signal and the cop charges you a different rate based on your car? That's not fair.
Yeah.
You know there's
Yeah.
something inherently wrong. But if your daughter or if your sister sleeps with someone, why is that wrong? And if you sleep with someone or if your son sleeps with someone, why is that
Why does
right?
that seem like an achievement, right?
है ना? तो मतलब उस तरीके से evaluated. So
Hmm.
step one is really unlearn, and step two is try to have an equal footing for everything that you do. I mean, it's not really hard. I mean, look at women as people you have to and you should want to respect, and look at guys as people as somebody you should want to and have to respect. Now, keep in mind you're always going to have your sour eggs. You're going to have your bad apples, but
Yeah.
don't let that bad apple lead the crowd. I don't know why.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know
If you
why.
don't like the crowd, then leave the crowd. Find another
Yeah,
crowd.
leave the crowd. It's. I mean, if you're in a group of guys who looks at the girls and are like, bro, क्या item जा रही है? मतलब,
The second thing is raise your voice within that crowd
yeah,
if you can. Like,
exactly,
Exactly. A lot of
exactly.
people do this when someone says they want to raise their voice, but they're like, oh, if I raise my voice, they will bully me.
Yeah,
You know?
मतलब, like, the irony of life is we're always waiting for someone to lead. But the
yeah.
problem is not just us. Everybody else is also waiting for someone to lead. So, matlab, somebody has to raise his hand and say, hey, you know what? I will say I have a problem with this, and maybe three other people will join in. Have the courage to be the first one in a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And if again, this conversation was never about saying that men as a whole are bad or women as a whole are good. This conversation was about trying to say that some men suck and some women suck, but that doesn't make the other half eligible for being triggered.
Yeah.
मतलब,
Yeah.
मत करो ऐसा यार. Like, if women are talking about something, if women have a problem, the only way you can solve that problem is synergy. You have to join in. If you have something bad to say, don't go live on Instagram. Don't say shit like not all men, because that's a very
The listen, man. Like in general, just be there and listen and understand.
yeah.
Because if you're not open to that, then it'll always become like you defending before you like listen to the other person, or like understand what they're trying to tell you. Because again, it's one of those things where we need to, and again, this whole point that comes to it is the unlearning fact and understanding and being like open to the fact that there are people suffering, and why that doesn't mean they're blaming everyone. It's just that you need to understand what it is
Yeah.
about, and
You
just
have to understand where our rage comes from. Like
yeah.
a lot of like I understand that you men are so pissed that women are just blaming in general. And if you're so pissed about just that fact, just imagine that we've been looking over our shoulders since we were kids.
Yeah.
Imagine that rage.
And that's not fair. That's not fair. I
Not at
mean,
all.
and you know what? This disturbs me because um ever since I learned this, I've spoken to every woman in my life that I've known, and they have agreed to this. I learned this fact that said that every woman at some point in her life has been sexually harassed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And initially, when I read that, I was like, "ये सही नहीं हो सकता." And I tried to validate it. So I challenged my own restriction, my own conditioning, and I said, you know what? Let me validate this. Let me ask this to women. So women who I was comfortable enough to ask this with, 100% of them always agreed that there was somebody who tried to sexually harass them. You know, the worst part is it was almost always a fucking relative. It
Yeah.
was,
That
Yeah.
is
they
crazy.
were they were the person who had the most, like a neighbor, a relative. They had the most
Yeah.
access. And you know the worst part is when the daughter tells her mother says, "चुप बैठ, ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो सकता, पागल है क्या, ऐसे सब बातें नहीं बोलते."
Yeah,
And
they're like, no, that can't be possible. He's a very nice human being. He always comes home. He
it's
always brings
so
sweets.
fucked
That's
up.
completely normal.
Matlab, imagine, like, I am outright openly admitting it that I can almost never relate. I'm sure that I will never be able to relate to what a woman goes through, but I can at least try and understand.
Yeah,
And
and
what
that's the first thing we can do, right?
because it's important to be sensitive. Like just imagine being a woman opening up Instagram and you have a message from some guy in a tier two city who's saying, "Hi, ma'am, please show Bob." Sent to
Yeah.
Bob.
Bob,
Imagine.
Bob
You
and
have no
Magic.
idea how often that happens.
That is like just
My
imagine
God.
waking up in the morning and reading that the first thing that you
Yeah.
see on Instagram is that, and that
Yeah.
is so unfortunate. And I think as a guy or as a man, I don't think we go through that on. And I know secretly we are like, you know what, apne ko aayega to maza aayega, but no,
Like,
trust me, it's
no,
not.
malab, yeah.
Like I'll give you a personal anecdote, right?
When it's unwanted, nobody like you wouldn't like
No,
it,
I was a
honestly.
douche. I was a douche. Like a few years ago,
Yeah.
I used to think unwanted attention will be fun, and then I went to Indonesia. So I went to a small island over there called Batam, which is off Singapore. And basically, it's like a party island. A lot of people go there because booze is cheap and seafood is great. Now, the problem with a lot of men in Indonesia is that they can't grow facial hair. And at that point of time, I had a
Hmm.
beard.
Hmm.
And somehow women over there found that really interesting. Well, it's not somehow, I can imagine they've not really seen beards. So I didn't understand their language. So they used to keep catcalling me. And eventually I figured it out. And initially it was fun. But then one woman actually reached up to me and tugged on my beard and gave me a wink. And I got scared. And that's when I realized that it might in my mental scenarios it might come across as lots of fun, but when it actually happens to you, and that was once in my entire fucking life. I think as a man saying that I got harassed once is such a privilege because you could be a woman.
Really, it's not a
Yeah.
it's not at all,
No,
man.
I mean it's a privilege because relatively if you're a woman you're going to have to go through that every single day, and that's
And
messed up.
that's the messed up part. And why does it take us having to go through these kind of situations to understand? Like that's
Like if,
stupid.
if, if someone is saying, "Hi, I'm a woman, my life is hard," why can't we accept it? Why do we have to go
Yeah.
like, no, we have to do some Freaky Friday kind of scenario where we swap
Freaky
bodies.
Friday.
I'll live your life for 24 hours and then I will say, हाँ सच्ची में मुश्किल था. Like, why? Like, just believe somebody when they say that their life is tough.
Yeah.
And the best thing that you can do, as Ayushman mentions, is when someone says they have a problem, listen to them. Unlike
Yeah.
what I'm doing right now. Sorry.
A lot of women right now are being like, I was generally talking to like my friends and stuff, and they were like, oh, for the first time in my life, I feel safe because I'm at my home all the time, and that just broke my heart.
And
That
again, wow, that's just deep, that sentence. Like just think
Yeah.
about what she's saying. And the sheeples, really, you need to understand, right? And I'm quite sure like there must be so many people out there who might be listening to this podcast and thinking like and hopefully for the guys it'll make them for a moment think about what they have been doing themselves.
Yeah.
But and I hope like for the women listening in, like I hope we like if we you can help teach your friends as well to a point, like you know what, listen and ask like people you are comfortable with to start speaking out as well, because it is. And that's why we asked Varshini here to tell us like what is it that we need to do, what is it that we can do to help our friends, and like not be those quiet people who are like who might be there to support you but then
Yeah.
can't speak out, or and it doesn't help, and doesn't help the agenda at the end of the day. Like what is it that we need to do, and what are the actions we need to take no matter what.
And there's one interesting thing that I have here towards the end. I wanted to do the segment where we're going to give Varshini a bunch of words and we're just going to have her first thoughts, the first thing
Okay.
that comes to mind. Because these are words that, as a guy, we think we've got our head around pretty well. But I think having a woman's
Perspective on it, yeah.
so Varshini, I can give you the first word.
Okay, go for it.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, mansplaining.
So tired. So tired. Stop talking over us. Just listen.
Okay. Feminist.
Equality, bigger conversation, bigger fight.
Hmm. Molestation.
Uh, Happens every day, very triggered.
Cyber stalking.
Sorry.
Cyber stalking.
Okay.
Uh, Also happens very often, and it must be stopped. Whether it's with for a woman or a man or whoever, just stop it. Do not go. I mean, it's so easy to sit behind a computer and write shit, but it's completely ruining that person's life. Please think about that.
Hmm. Patriarchy.
And incredibly deep rooted, and we have to work really hard to bring up progress and change.
Mm-hmm.
Man's privilege, and that's the last one.
Sorry.
Man's privilege.
If you can't hear him.
Z, you just cut off.
Sorry. The word was man's privilege. A man's privilege.
Man's privilege.
Yes.
Right. You all have lots, so please check your privilege. Please recognize your privilege. Do not bring that into the conversation and be like, just at least, okay, let's not talk about conversation, but understand your privilege and maybe use that privilege for better. Maybe you could do that. Maybe you could bring out some change because you all have more privilege than women.
That sounds right. I mean, I think it goes back to Peter Parker saying that with great power
Comes great
Comes great
responsibility.
responsibility. Yes.
I think it's important that if you actively identify that you have privilege, you need to really use that privilege to help people out, because trust me, as a society, we'll only get better if we all work in synergy. Otherwise, we're even 60 years down the line, someone's going to have a podcast, it's going to talk about some boys' locker room part 30.
Yeah.
And we don't
Part
want
31 shouldn't happen. Please,
Yeah.
no.
like let's like as a generation coming of age, as a group of listeners who are probably about to get married, have a child in the next 5 to 10 years, if you want to do that,
Yeah.
let's at least try to pledge to shed aside a lot of these inhibitions.
Yeah.
Talk to women, sympathize
Yeah.
with them, try to
Sorry,
empathize with them.
Z, you cut off again.
Sorry. So what I was saying is talk to women, empathize with them, see see trying to come, and understand that the world does not end if two people have different opinions. So the world isn't a zero sum game. If you think something is right and the other person thinks something is wrong, great. But don't become a keyboard warrior and try to sort
Yeah.
of put
Yeah.
them down. It's okay, have your opinion, that's fine. But at least try to challenge it
Yeah.
time for time.
And just one question, Varshini, like if you ever, like throughout the pod as well, in this
Yeah.
episode, if you ever felt like we might have cut you off on some points or we might have spoken over you, just please do tell us right now, because this is something we also want to learn and see, like, you know what, we need to know where we are, like we need to improve our behavior as well. So did you at all feel like we
No,
were
no,
cutting
I
you
didn't
off?
feel that. I didn't feel that at all. And I generally am very happy to know people like this because it's something. It's going somewhere. I have some kind of hope now. Like, okay, there are men like this who want to bring about change and who want to help us in our fight and in our agenda, and that's great.
And that's genuinely something like we need to work on together, and they shouldn't be like rare. Please, Sheeples, like don't make this a rare thing for people to do.
Let this be like a new normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make this the new normal.
Yeah,
And
let's do that.
remember this, yeah, like baat karte raho. Keep talking about it, because if this conversation fizzles out again, then it's on all of us, and that shouldn't happen. I mean, on try to be constructive, try to be positive, try to, if you want to talk about boys' locker room or girls' locker room, try to present facts. If you have opinions, keep in mind that somebody else can have their own, so don't get too offended by it. But at the same time, let's have everything on an equal footing. Let's not have different rules for the same scenario for different genders. मत करो ऐसा यार, मतलब don't do that. A guy having sex or a girl having sex isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's an extremely basic thing. It's the reason why you were born. I mean, it's hard to believe for some people, but your parents had sex, and that's why you were born. You will have a partner and have sex and have kids. So, मतलब इस taboo को हटाओ. Use words for what they are. Don't use like tiny cute little words to disguise actual words. Try to not make something a taboo or a forbidden fruit. And just keep talking about it, because that's how we'll make it through this.
Yes, I completely agree.
And more than any of this, like if this seems a lot to you right now, just do one thing: listen. That's it.
Ooh, that is good advice.
Yeah.
I need that.
But okay, so since we are ending this, before we do, we aren't going to be plugging ourselves. We want Varshini to plug her stuff. Like, I know that you've been working on a lot of things, and you are like looking towards starting up your own business and doing. You're an art director, which is amazing. So you know what? I don't want to say anything more. Please, like, tell the people, Sheeples, like what you are doing, what you're up to, and where they can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram. It's at Varshini Raaj, VARSHINIRAAJ. I also have an art page called A Girl with a Magic Brush. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm also an art director. I freelance. And I'm also working on launching my own fashion brand, but that will come soon. You all will know.
Cool is that? And if you're interested in collaborating with her, please don't ask for her phone number. मतलब do it as long as she wants to give it to you, because free will. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
honestly, like just
Tag all of your handles. We'll do
yeah,
that. We'll mention all the.
we will tag all your
Go give
handles
us
like
some
on
love.
in our description for sure. And
Yeah.
honestly, just saying, like I've seen some of her work, like here at times I get to see it on Twitter, or I got to see the video that you had been been the art director for, and such like great work. Honestly, it's really beautiful, and you sheeples need to see it. I need to learn that one day.
Thank you.
One
Thank you
day.
so much.
We're trying to be not sexist, and like how
Yeah.
guys is like a very normal collective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sexist way to say
yeah.
things. That's why we want to make it sheeples.
Sheeple and I'm a sheeple. Like that. Yeah. मतलब
Yeah.
यही basic चीज है ना, like मतलब if you have a mother who calls your sister beta, stop her. मतलब
Yeah.
it might be very innocent and harmless, but that's how it all starts. Innocent and
Yeah.
harmless. Like it just starts in an Instagram group, and before you know it, you're on a podcast for the wrong reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
I
yeah,
guess
we're gonna tag Varshini. This is Z signing off. Thanks for listening. Be a better man, be a better woman, be a better person, be a better sheeple. And
this
follow Varshini. Check out all her cool
yeah,
work. And we're gonna see you on the Harry Potter podcast next.
for sure. For sure. And well, this is Ayushman, since this time you got to know who I was for sure. Even though y'all already knew. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, it's me signing off. I shall see you later.
And Varshini signing off. Thank you for having me on this podcast. It was great.
Yep. Bye.